Okay, and today's talk is on releasing stored stress, how trauma lives in the body and how to let it go for good. Now, a little bit about me. Apologies if you've already heard this because you attended another one or you already know me. Just to say that I have a normally dysfunctional childhood. That's how I like to think about it. There were some things that happened in my childhood that wouldn't constitute outright trauma, but they were actually quite significant. So I had parental bereavement at 18 and chronic illness before that, and a lot of anxiety in the home. I became a university health researcher, being the sort of person who was trying to make up for what I had lacked. So I went full on into something that would help people. But unfortunately, it wasn't the right job for me. And I ended up having a massive crash and a new learning, basically, where I had to change everything about myself and everything shifted, a new life direction. And now I'm a specialist in trauma, anxiety, and chronic fatigue syndrome, or all kinds of fatigue states. I wrote my first book on trauma and emotional healing, A Scar That Won't Heal, in 2015. It was the same year that Bessel van der Kolk's famous The Body Keeps the Score came out, so I was in good company. And in 2016, I completed my PhD in trauma and chronic pain, which is a specialist area of mine. And in 2021, I decided to move more into group work, and that's where I am now, doing one-to-ones and some group work. And my mission is to inform and empower people to heal. Okay, so let's get absolutely to it. I'll just let some more people in. Everyone who's coming in now, could you take your video off, please, and mute? Thank you. So stress, nervous system, and survival. I want to cover what stress is. What is stress? Well, a stressor is any event or condition that causes a physical, emotional, or psychological response in a person. And it can be external or internal, such as financial worries or chronic pain, can be many, many things. And stressors can be positive or negative, depending on the individual's perception. All stress is detected by our autonomic nervous system. That's the one that runs under the hood, as it were. And it responds by changing our physiology to ensure survival of our physical body by altering our body budget, and that is the physiological and emotional regulation. And oddly, these are the same system. So emotions have a great deal of impact on your physiology. Obviously, I cover that in a great deal of detail in the reset program, which I'm going to come on to at the end. This stress response is automatic and unconscious, so it's very susceptible to our early environment. That's the nature of being a human child. And if our early experience is challenging and or we're highly sensitive, sometimes those two things go together, our set point for stress lowers, affecting stress resilience, and the body begins to struggle to repair itself, and symptoms ensue. In fact, they start often in childhood, but they get bigger and more serious, usually over the life course. And so here's a little graph of how stress affects our resilience and health, and you can see that stress isn't necessarily bad. We need some for optimal performance up to this point in the graph. But when we're overwhelmed, the hyperreactive stage, you end up in emotional and physical exhaustion. And that's what happened to me. And it causes tremendous health breakdown. So stress is not just what happens to us. It can also be what didn't happen to us. It can be things that we needed that weren't given to us. Okay, so it can be that the support was lacking. It can be that we were humiliated, or we were shamed, or we were just not heard. And those kinds of internal emotional stress has become quite toxic and damaging to our health. But not all the stress, of course, is current. Stored stress from emotionally overwhelming experience does not disappear, but stays in the nervous system to be avoided in the future. That's why it's there. The body isn't trying to harm you, it's trying to protect you by remembering what happened to you so that you can avoid it in future. But of course, that becomes very limiting in your adult life. And if our early experience was unsafe or we did not get the support we needed, we grow up, like I did, with a propensity to stress and exhaustion, burnout. That's just the way it goes. The physiology, you see, is hijacked, leading to all sorts of problems. It could be addictions or cravings. It could be low immunity, fatigue, anxiety, and pain, and all manner of strange symptoms. I covered those in the previous talk, but many, many things are controlled by your autonomic nervous system. And of course, it affects your behavior too. And so self-sabotage and repeating patterns of behavior are also what tends to happen. Now, I wanted to counter the idea that most people don't have trauma, okay? I wanted to redefine trauma, because trauma isn't necessarily, terrible things that happen to you. You were abandoned or you were somehow hurt in physical sense. It can be things that you perceived as an emotional threat or chronic stress that you cannot escape. The inescapability is what creates the trauma. And so trauma is anything that happened that overwhelmed your nervous system's capacity to adapt. And look, stress that you can't escape is the definition of childhood in some senses. In that, you can't choose who you live with, you can't choose your parents, you don't get to choose where you go to school. And so things that can happen that overwhelm you quite easily. And most childhoods contain some trauma, but interestingly, you may not remember them consciously. All right, so if you ask yourself, have I had trauma? I certainly would have said no. I had a loving family, but I completely omitted the experience of losing my father. So trauma is all about perception, not actuality. It's personal, it's pervasive, it affects everything, and it's persistent. It doesn't decrease with time. Time does not heal in this case because it's time independent where it's stored. The emotional memories are stored in a part of the brain, the limbic system, which doesn't have a date stamp, doesn't have a sense of time. And so small stressors like over responsibility, rejection, loss, etc., become amplified to create a cumulative stress burden that does not disappear over time, but accumulates, but it's repressed below conscious awareness so that when it's never fully resolved, and the system, which is designed really for short, sharp stresses, can never switch off. And so we stay in a permanent stress state that we may not be aware of. We may think we're coping and we're managing, but we do have symptoms as the messenger of what's actually going on. And it's really important to understand that you cannot think your way out of this. Accumulating more information does not solve it. You need a new approach. And later on, I'm going to show you the approach that I work with, the group support. And we're having really good results when we've run it before, because group support is shown to be a really valid approach for resolving trauma. So past experience is something that landscapes the brain, okay? It's at the base of all illness. And we call it adverse childhood experience, or ACE. And as you can see in this pyramid, it can even lead to early death. It's very common for people to experience heart attacks and all sorts of other diseases because they haven't resolved their trauma. So what if you didn't have anything traumatic happen to you? You didn't have my experience of losing your parent, but just understand that an adverse childhood event is a personal interpretation. It's anything in your past deemed inescapable by your mind body. And as I said, it's at the base of all the illness, as we can see, because it affects everything. The ACE studies were one of the most profound studies ever done in 1998, and subsequently, before that, nobody had really questioned people about what happened to them. And so it's not just big T trauma, those, you're held at gunpoint, or you're in a war zone, but more common events, what we call small T trauma, that really affect most people. It's extremely common. The estimate is about 70 to 80% of people have some small T trauma. Another name for this is attachment wounds, because it's all about attachment to your caregiver when you're young. And so things like birth trauma, being separated from your mum for whatever reason, or she's got postnatal depression, or any of those things can really affect the attachment style and the way you feel about yourself in relation to others. It patterns our responses for life, and they get stuck in the body without the means to resolve them. You can't do it by thinking, as I said. It interacts with your stress response system. You have a stress response system, starts in the brain, and it goes down to your adrenals. It's the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenals. And it makes you hypervigilant to threat. So you end up feeling like you're on edge the whole time. And this changes your physiology, sending you into automatic threat responses. And it may even shut you down entirely in extreme stress. We call this vagal collapse. The vagus nerve is something I'll talk about in a moment. But it's completely or largely unknown in modern medicine outside pediatrics. And it's true to say that men and women react very differently. Our stress response systems are very different, as our hormones and neurotransmitters are. And it is true that more women than men, it's very gendered, suffer from these chronic conditions. And I do cover that, and I don't think many programs do. I think it's really important to understand how it works. And so how to recover is all about expanding what's called in psychological terms, it's a rather strange term, the window of tolerance, this green zone, okay? So up here, we've got hyperarousal. This is feeling restless and angry and overwhelmed and anxious. You're in fight and flight, basically. But you can also go down into shutdown, into overwhelm, disconnect, just can't be bothered. Something we call a freeze or flop response. So what we want is for your system to be operating mostly from the green zone. You can't avoid some of these experiences because you need your fight and flight system and you need your shutdown system too. But we want to exist mostly here in a safe and just right, calm place. So we need to expand that window tolerance of neural safety, the green zone, to change your autonomic balance. And we aim to widen the gap by allowing the brain to know that the memory of wounded attachment is over. Okay, because unfortunately, as I said, it doesn't have a sense of time, so it believes it's in the ever-present now. And once we know it's over, we can begin to neurally self-regulate. We bring the vagus nerve back online. The vagus nerve is extremely important for neurological balance, and people who've had adverse childhood experiences often have a poorly functioning vagus nerve. And so what we're looking to create actually is emotional safety, which is sometimes called the social engagement system. Okay, I didn't call it this. This is polyvagal theory, Stephen Porges's ideas. The social engagement system, it's all about being able to connect with people in a safe way. And so it's really key to recovery to bring that back online. So you cannot use the stress adaptive brain to resolve itself. You need safe connection and a body-based approach. All right, thinking will not resolve it. So how? Well, in my program, I use vagal toning tools and somatic body-based tools that I teach you, but also the whole point of the group program is the interpersonal connection where we work as a group on resolving past emotional wounding so it can be over. And look, group work is extremely powerful. Knowing that you're heard, knowing that you're supported, knowing that people are there for you and they're going through the same program you are is extremely grounding. And so the social engagement system is part of your vagus nerve called your ventral vagus. It's the one largely at the top of your diaphragm. And there are things that you can do, which I'll be introducing, self-help exercises, which I've added to the program recently, to help you engage your social engagement system, that top-level autonomic system, so that you can start to feel safe again, safe in your body and safe in your life. Now, this social engagement system is really key in primates because it's designed to elicit maternal care to ensure survival. A baby can't survive without its mother shortly after birth. If a child is deprived of love, it may have all the physical needs, but they often don't thrive. It's failure to thrive syndrome. And it's linked to positive emotions of joy, satisfaction, and crucially, safety. Okay, so that's what we have to build. And here's a quote from Stanley Rosenberg, who wrote the book, Accessing the Healing Power of the Vagus Nerve. The way other people respond to us is based on a combination of the autonomic state they are in and the state we are in. And our emotions play out in the interaction between them. And so we often run scripts based on our childhood experience and how we learned to find our way in our family of origin. And if we become stuck in that fight and flight or dorsal vagal state, sympathetic dominance or shutdown, it's often hard for other people to understand our values, our motivation, and our behavior. Our actions seem irrational and often run counter to our own best interests and can be destructive to ourselves and others. And I think this is such an important point. And does that sound familiar? You know, I definitely had a people-pleasing adaptation, and I would just do whatever anybody else wanted to do. And I've had to really, really learn. Some would say I haven't quite learned it yet, but I'm learning as best I can to stand up for my boundaries, because we are running scripts that we don't even know we're running. And so somatic approaches are all about creating a safe space. It's all about safety. And safety is a bodily felt experience. It's somatic. It's not intellectual. Okay, it doesn't exist intellectually. It's a felt sense. And in order to feel it, you have to connect with the thwarted survival energy of inescapability. And this is not intellectual, but instinctive, unconscious, and somatic. You have to connect with your felt experience within a safe holding space. And our group sessions provide that space. They're a chance to connect with other sensitive people. This is really important. Going through the program in a small group where you can feel free to share, because a lot of the people I work with are highly sensitive people, or HSP. Now, this is a sliding scale which encompasses many or most neurodiversities, including autism and ADHD, which, as you know, is vastly underdiagnosed, particularly in women. And so understanding the sensitivity and knowing that you'll be held in the space when you work as a group is so important. And so what I do is I provide the opportunity to go deeper into the course. We discuss it. We help you to broaden your understanding and translate it into the felt experience of safety. And it can be remarkably quick when you get the right approach. And we practice tools and techniques like havening and tapping, sometimes also called EFT, as well as discussion of all sorts of home interventions that you can explore, which are included with the course materials. Now, this course, this program, the Nervous System Reset, is guided by me. Okay, so it's not a random person that's just going to facilitate. It's me with my 12 plus years of experience of holding the space for people who need emotional safety. And you can heal. I really need you to know this. And I say it's simple, actually, but it's not easy. If it was easy, you'd have done it ages ago. The problem is you can't change the brain from within. You need to have external safe connection with another person who does not judge you. And so healing is all about being able to perceive or experience that neural safety. I'm okay, I'm safe, safe here in my body, safe here in my life. And once we do that, we reprogram the past neural patterns to know that the perceived threat is over. And this is the basis of the course, which is the emotional audit journey, which goes from acceptance to understanding, to discover, to implementation, and to thrive. It's a mnemonic audit. And so we need to be witnessed in our distress without the need to fix it, minimize it, or justify it. We need to be heard in a way that does not make us feel like we're having to make the best of things. We have to acknowledge with compassion what happened to us. And just to be present with the physical sensations in the body. And people find this really liberating, this idea of somatic sensing. So you don't think about this. You go into the body and you find where you're holding your stress. And you get to be held in that by supportive others. And then your body is able to let go when it becomes aware that you're no longer stuck in the past responses. And this is the true meaning of response ability. Think about it. It's your ability to create a new response. So what we're looking to do then is to transmute, the unprocessed emotions of past experience, the things that happened or the things that didn't happen, by feeling them in a safe connection, to remove the emotional charge, that energy that's stored in your body, so that your nervous system can reset from a place of safety. And this is the basis of the nervous system reset program. So there's a course that runs alongside the group sessions, the emotional audit course, newly revamped, and the group sessions together are the nervous system reset program. So just to remind you, the emotional journey that you're going to go on, at the moment you might feel you're stuck, you feel a bit hopeless, and you know something needs to change. We take you from that to understanding that symptoms are not random. They are past trauma stored in your body. And then once you understand that, you can learn to retrain your nervous system to get out of fight and flight or freeze. And the final weeks are implementing and putting into practice some of the tools until you get the life you want, the life you've always wanted, the one that's not restricted by these past experiences that are playing out in random ways. And so that's a rather detailed slide. Perhaps when you get the recording, you might want to pause that. You need to sort of see the 7 stages plus a bonus, which is a practical session with 3 different therapists who work in similar ways to me. But different approaches are really important. And so I give you the opportunity to witness not just my approach, but other people's as well. We do have a little bit of time if anybody does want to ask me something. But if not, we'll... Tracy? Did you want to
Hi,
say?
Patricia. I haven't seen you for ages.
No, we haven't seen each other, have we?
No, I've been doing well. I was just wondering if you could, if there's time, do like a quick example of some havening or something
that's a
for
really
other
good idea.
people.
Yeah, let's do that. All right, havening is a self-touch exercise. So it just allows you to stroke down the arms. If you want to do that, just stroking down the arms and saying out loud, it's really important you say it out loud, I'm here.
I'm here.
This is now. And I'm learning to let go of anything that's in my way. I can do that now because I'm supported. And that's enough. And so am I. Always. And then you just take a nice deep breath and you notice how you feel. And you should notice an autonomic response, right? A sense of calming, or sometimes It can feel a little odd because you're feeding back from the body to the brain. It's what we call a bottom-up approach. It's somatic. It's not about thinking, discussing. It's not cognitive. It's a felt sense. And you just notice how different you feel afterwards. And as we do that over and over, you start to retrain the nervous system. It's just one of the simple tools that I use. It's called havening, and it's really profound, actually. Often gets to the places that people have not reached for a long, long time because they're very intellectual or they've shut down their emotional system. So it's really key, I think, to know these body-based tools and to experience them in a safe environment where nobody's going to judge you, nobody's going to humiliate you, nobody's going to compare notes. You know, you're going to be witnessed in your experience. It's wonderful to. Yes, good. I'm glad you feel safe, Jenny. So nice and calm. Yes, havening is a really profound tool. It's oh, thank you for the heart, Katrina. Yes, it's one of the tools I use regularly because it works, it's effective, and it's free. So there we are. All right, everyone. Take care of you, and I'm going to stop the recording